the Tisarana and the Pansil. So, Namaskar Kyan.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Buddham saranam gacchami.
Buddham saranam gacchami.
Dhammam saranam gacchami. Sangham saranam gacchami.
Sangham saranam gacchami.
Dutiyampi buddham saranam gacchami.
Dutiyampi buddham saranam gacchami.
Dutiyampi dhammam saranam gacchami.
Dutiyampi dhammam saranam gacchami.
Dutiyampi sangham saranam gacchami.
Dutiyampi sangham saranam gacchami.
Tatiyampi buddham saranam gacchami.
Dutiyampi buddham saranam gacchami.
Tatiyampi dhammam saranam gacchami.
Dutiyampi dhammam gacchami.
Tatiyampi sangham saranam gacchami.
Dutiyampi sangham saranam gacchami.
Tisaranam nittitang Panatipata veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Adinnadana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Kamesu micchachara veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Musavada veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Suramerya manjapamadatthana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Saranena sandhim panchasilang dhammam sadhukam surakitam katuvana. Appamadena sampadeta.
Bhante. Sat.
Karaniyam atta kusalena yantang santang padang abhisamiccha. Sakko ujucha sujucha suvacho chassamudu anatimani. Santussako cha suparo cha Bhakitcho cha salahukavutti. Santindriyo cha nipako cha Appagabho puresu ananugindho. Nacha kuddham samachare kinchi. Yena vinyu pare upavadeyum. Sukhino va kemeno hontu. Samde satta bhavantu sukhitatta. Ye kechitana bhutatti. Tasavata vrava anavasesa. Digava ye mahantava. Majjhima rasakanukatula. Dittava yeva ditta. Ye cha dure vasanti avidure. Bhutava sambhave siva. Sambe satta bhavantu sukhitatta. Naparo parang nikundeta. Tati manyata katta chinang kanchi. Yaro sanna patinga sanya. Nanyang manyasa dukkam iccheya. Matayatani yang puttang. Ayusa eka puttang anurakke. Evam pisam bhutesu manasam bhavayera parimanam mettancha sambam tasmin
Manasam
bhavayera parimanam Udhang adochatiryancha asambadhang averang asapatthang Chittang charang sinova sayanova yavathassa vigatamidho etang satim aditteya brahmametam viharam idamahu Nittin chanupagam silva dasanena sampanno kame suvineyakekam nahi jatu gambaseyam punareti. Now, is everybody still there? It seems like a few people have dropped off the line.
No, Bhante, everyone is still here.
Okay, I can only see myself and Indica. How many other people are here at this meeting?
There's about 20, 16, 20.
Right, okay, well, I can't see any of you except for Indica, but that will do. I pretend like I'm talking to an audience at night time, but I can't see your faces. So can everybody hear me properly?
Yes, Bhante, we can hear you.
Okay, great.
Yes, Bhante, we can hear you.
Yes, Bhante, we can hear you.
Yes, Bhante, we can hear you.
Well, perhaps if we say, if you can't hear me, please say something, and I won't be able to hear you say anything anyway, so that doesn't make any sense. Anyway, it seems to be fine. All right, so we have a short amount of time here, so I'm not quite sure how you want to proceed. Does anybody have any ideas about how we should run this meeting? Okay, so that would be normal Sri Lankan style. Nobody's thought about it beforehand. So how about I give a short talk first. I'll talk about what I've been doing here in Sri Lanka and all the things that you probably want to know. So here I am. I'm fine. I don't have corona. All right. I've been here quarantined for 10 days. We were very conservative, even though I checked out negative on the antigen test. We decided to be very conservative and to act like I was a possible corona case. So I've been here at Mahathir's house for the last more than 10 days now, and I haven't had any symptoms of the coronavirus whatsoever. All I've had is some stomach problems, which were likely from food poisoning and not from the coronavirus. Now, where should I start? Back in 2019, when I first arrived, it was the time of the Easter bombing. And things were actually normalizing when I first arrived. I was back in Colombo and children were going to school and everything was normal, except there were police and army people on the streets with guns and just checking out the bottom of cars with mirrors. But I still went on Pinapata anyway and everything was fine. I came to Sri Lanka for a number of reasons. One of them was to improve my health. I felt that my practice would progress a lot faster if I found ways to improve, one, my digestive problems and my skin problems. So one of the first things I did after I came to Sri Lanka was visit an Ayurveda hospital in Malta. And that treatment went very, very well. I'd say after that treatment, probably about 60% of my illness symptoms went away, but still there was 40% left. So as to that other 40%, that has more or less reduced to 5% or less now, because I've been taking quite a number of Ayurvedic treatments and meditation has been going very, very well. So the purpose of achieving the level of health necessary to maintain this walking and forest lifestyle until the day that I die, I think has been achieved. I think I have enough knowledge and understanding of how to maintain the body and the mind using natural methods and using the Dhamma in order to do what the monks did in the Buddha's time. That is, live with just 3 robes and a bowl and little else, live in the forest, walk around barefoot, go on alms round, die between trees in the forest, and not need to die in the middle of a private hospital in Colombo, and be trapped by very rich Sri Lankan Dayakas like you. So that's a really big achievement. I'm very happy about it. It's something that I'm looking forward to teaching other monks how to do. Now, my first ranger retreat was at Nayuena, near Melsiddipura, my root monasteries where I ordained. And soon after that, I went walking again. Then I went to Matara for my Ayurvedic treatment. Then I went to Hantana. And there's a Aranya in Hantana, the foothills of Nugara, called Ulpatkanda. And very kindly, the abbot there sponsors my visa. But he made this promise to me that he would sponsor my visa and not try to control me whatsoever. So I'm free to wander wherever I like. And that's what I would be doing if it weren't for the coronavirus situation. But in any case, I was in Hantana for a little while in February of 2020. And then I started wandering about. First, I experimented by walking about 100 kilometers around Nugara. And that went very well. I crossed Victoria Dam twice. And when I came back, I felt confident enough to walk to Mahintale. But then I heard that Nanadeepa Bhante, the well-known monk from Denmark, the ascetic forest monk and wandering monk from Denmark, had contracted cancer and was dying and had been diagnosed with terminal cancer. And I decided that instead of going to Mahintale to pay respects to Mahinda Bhante, it's better for me to pay respects to Nanadeepa Bhante, because Nanadeepa Bhante is still alive and can teach me, but Mahinda Bhante unfortunately has passed away and won't be teaching anyone. So I walked from Hantana to Tanjantana, and on that trip I went through the unused roads, through tea estates, basically. So I walked through Tamil country and Muslim country, and that still went fine. So my confidence increased from that. Unfortunately, because hill country is very hilly, I pushed myself a little bit too hard. So by the time I got through the Sripada National Park and came out on the Balangor to Badula Road, I was feeling very, very tired. And at first I was going to go to the Ananda Maitreya Pansala in Balangora for the night. But a layman talked me on the side of the road and recommended that I go to Silogam, which is an Aranya near Belihul, which is now run, made very famous by Radha Bhante, a young monk about my age who gives Dhamma talks to like whole stadiums full of people. He talks from like 6 o'clock in the evening until 6 a.m. in the morning, continuously, without going even to the toilet. So that's a very nice Aranya, but it was a bit of a mistake because going to that Aranya added another 10 kilometers to my journey. And so by the time I got to the Aranya, I was feeling quite sick. But fortunately, I was allowed to stay at the Aranya for an entire week to recover from that sickness. Then I head off from that Aranya to Tanjantana through Balangora. And that was the first time I met Anura Mahathir, actually. he was going to Tanjung Tanna by car with his wife early in the morning to see Nana Dipa Bhante at Tanjung Tanna. And then he saw me on the side of the road and stopped and offered me some alms food. And then we talked and we found out we were going to Tanjung Tanna for the same reason. He, of course, offered me a lift, and I, of course, politely declined the invitation. I went to Tanjung Tanna, and by the time I got to Tanjung Tanna, coronavirus was getting very, very serious. And about a week after I arrived in Tanjung Tanna, everything got locked down for the first time. So I arrived just in time. The interesting thing was that because it was the first lockdown and everybody was really, really scared, I got a little bit of abuse on the streets when I went through non-Sinhalese areas on that journey, because I was a foreigner and Chinese. And in those days when Corona was first out, you know, China was the culprit. But also, by the time I got to Tanna, I was looking a bit sick and tired. And I actually didn't make the last 14 kilometers. I got to a little village called Borwater where there's a pansala. And then I was feeling sick again. And luckily, just before I got to the pansala, a young man saw me on the side of the road and invited me into his house with Yalampas. And then he gave me his number. And when I was resting under the bo tree at that pansala at Borwater, he, for some reason, came around to look for me. And then he asked me if I needed any help, and I asked him to give me a lift in the last 14 kilometers to Tanjung Tanna. Now, I'm not sure if that young man told the police that I was sick, or somebody else along the way heard that I was sick. But anyway, when I was at Tanna, it turned out that the police and the Sri Lankan Intelligence Department, whatever they're called, they were looking for me because I was a possible corona case. But in any case, that all died down. They checked me out and everything was fine. I just stayed at Tanna and promised not to go anywhere, and everything was fine. So the upshot was that I ended up staying at Tanna for about an entire year through the first few corona lockdowns, and had the blessed opportunity to personally attend to Nana Dipa Bhante. So my particular task was to give Nana Dipa Bhante a massage once a day during the last few months of his life, before he left Tanna to go to Adalgalan. I was very, very lucky. My next charaka after that was actually to see Nana Dipa Bhante again, because there came a stage a few months later when Nana Dipa Bhante was very surprisingly taken away by helicopter from Tanjung Tanna to Colombo. And I and another senior monk became convinced that Nana Dipa Bhante would probably end up dying in a private hospital in Colombo, which was completely the opposite of what he wanted. And if we sat on our hands and did nothing, then that would probably happen. So I organised to get a lift to Kuttasila Bhante in Lagala. So the Lagala area is where Nana Dipa Bhante set up many kutis for forest monks. And there's quite a number of forest monks in that area now. And now that Nana Dipa Bhante has passed away, that group is headed by a New Zealand monk called Kuttasila Bhante. He's the most senior foreign monk in Sri Lanka now, I think. And our idea was that if we convinced Kuttasila Bhante to come with us to Colombo, then the Dayaka who was looking after Nana Dipa Bhante in Colombo would not be able to refuse us. So what was happening was that when we were at Tanjung Tanna, we were getting no news about Nana Dipa Bhante's state of health, and clearly getting distorted reports. There was something going on. in Colombo. And the Dayaka looking after Nandita Bhante wasn't being straight with us. He was also not allowing any monks to visit Nandita Bhante, which is very, very unusual. And so we thought that if Guttasila Bhante came with us, Guttasila Bhante being the most senior foreign monk in Sri Lanka and one of the most senior monks in Sri Lanka in general, and also a friend of that Dayaka, then that Dayaka would certainly not refuse us. So we went to Colombo. We managed to convince Guttasila Bhante to come with us. And we convinced another monk, a Czech monk, Posada, who had also previously been a nurse in Nandita Bhante when he was ill in different ways. We all went together, the four of us, in a van to Colombo. But unfortunately, when we got to Colombo, we were just refused flat any permission to see Nandita Bhante. And at that point, Guttasila Bhante pulled the plug on the operation and left Colombo. And all the rest of the other monks went with Guttasila Bhante, but I decided to stay in Colombo and to walk back to Tanjung Tanna. So that was my third charika. I walked from Colombo to Tanna through Cordoba. Then I stayed at Tanna again for a few months for that rains retreat. So my second rains retreat in Sri Lanka was at Tanna, in a little kuti in the forest in Tanna. They call it the Kale kuti. That's the official name, but the unofficial name for all the monks is the Peti kuti, because it's almost nothing more than a cardboard box with a metal roof. It's about 2 meters by 2 meters wide. And the walls are made out of literally cardboard, chivra and paint. And there's a metal roof. And it's next to a stream with water where you can bathe. And it's secluded from all the other kutis. But there's no drinking water, so you have to carry a bottle from the main sala, a bottle of drinking water from the main sala there every day. And I was going on Pindapata as much as I could until there was another corona lockdown, and the head monk at Tanna asked me to stop going on Pindapata, and out of respect for the head monk, I did so. I just took dana from the sala after that. But by the end of that rains retreat, I was a little bit tired of not being allowed to go on Pindapata, because I could see that, at least in the eyes of the villagers, the situation wasn't so serious. And that if a Pindapata monk came out, the villagers certainly would give and not be afraid or make any complaints to the police. So I was already thinking of leaving Tanna for another place, but then that really sealed the deal. I really wanted to go. And luckily, just before that, Anura Mahathir had made an offer to me to prepare a kuti that he previously made near Belihuloy, in the middle of the forest, a very special piece of land. It's actually inside the Sri Pada National Park. So I decided to go there. Now, interestingly, that piece of land is more or less exactly what I asked for in that prospectus that I wrote before I left Australia about Murrurundi. So Murrurundi is a piece of land that is right next to the Blue Mountains National Park, but it's also close enough to town to go on Pindapata. And what I was looking for was for that land to be bought not by a charity group run by a board of trustees, but just by a private owner, and for the private owner to informally but authentically give usage of that land out of faith to the Mahasangha. Unfortunately, after 3 months, no rich Dayaka of that sort came forward, and we just let go of the project. But exactly the same situation has arisen here in Sri Lanka, where Anura Mahathir is the sole private owner of this 2-acre piece of land, which is in the middle of the Sri Pada National Park. But it's 1 kilometre away from the nearest village. So it only takes about 20 minutes walking down a slope to get to the nearest village for Pindapata. So it's possible to go Pindapata every day. So we've decided to convert this 2-acre piece of land, which previously was just a mud kuti and 2 walking paths and not even a toilet, into a little, what we call a wanawasa. We're calling it a wanawasa and Deepanyana wanawasa, actually, in honor of Nana Deepa Bhante. We're using a different term to Aranya because we just want to subtly make it clear that it's not quite the same as an Aranya. That wanawasa is a special term for a awasa in the forest for monks who live with no electricity and no electrical equipment like mobile phones. The only electrical equipment allowed is emergency torches, but lighting in general at night time is supplied by coconut oil lamps. And electric clocks, battery-run clocks, to tell us what time we need to go on Pindapata, and that's all we're allowing. And also, no gas fires are allowed, but everything has to be done by traditional wood stove fires, by dara and nipa. The land is in between an ulpata, a spring, and a small stream, an alla. But the alla runs dry during the dry season now. But the ulpata runs all year round. So we piped the ulpata, and that's our water source. Of course, there's no hot water because there's no electricity, and it's a little bit cold up there. And there's a lot of leeches, but otherwise, the place is absolutely ideal. There's very few animals up there, and no dangerous animals. And the climate is cool but pleasant to people who come from colder countries like Australia. And it's very secluded, and the wilderness is beautiful. Furthermore, because it's in the middle of the national park, there's no road, and it's not possible to build a road to the Wanawasa. All we have is Kale Adipata, just these little tracks through the forest, which means it's basically impossible to build up. We can't bring up any complex equipment. So that's ideal. What we're trying to avoid is the normal overall historical pattern of Aranya development, where, of course, everything starts simple. But over time, forest kutis turn into forest cabanas, and the monks end up living like tourists in hotels in the middle of forests. And in particular, the villagers around the Aranya end up becoming very disgruntled and losing their faith and wondering why they're giving Pindapata food to monks who are living a material lifestyle 3 times greater than theirs. And then, of course, the main problem being that the monks themselves are no longer appamada, no longer able to make strong progress towards Nibbana. So while many people are resigned to anicca in Aranya development, that they're resigned to the idea that if you start an Aranya, then the maximum lifespan it has as a good Aranya is like 10 years maximum, and that's only really lucky. And after that, everything goes a bit pear-shaped. But I don't think that's the case. I think that we can avoid that decline, and that rather speedy and unfortunate decline, by doing things the way the Buddha did things. And that means actually looking at the level of technology that people had available in the Buddha's time, and being content with the level of technology available to the monks at the Buddha's time. So that's why we go without the electricity and without the gas fires. Now, what that does is it makes the support of rich dayakars completely unnecessary. And what that means is that the eventual ownership of the monastery by rich dayakars is avoided. Yeah? And the eventual incorrect ideas of rich dayakars and monks who like rich dayakars, those wrong ideas don't start to infiltrate the monastery and reduce the standard of the practice of the monks living at those monasteries. So that's the biggest reason for living this way. In other words, to have some sort of mechanism to avoid all the traps and the snares of Mara, or the ways that he tempts us with Kama Chanda. Now, the second advantage is that by keeping the conditions very, very simple and just a little bit difficult, a little bit dushkara, we attract the right kinds of monks who are really serious about attaining Nibbana. And we filter out all the monks who are looking for a place where they can look like they're practicing well, but actually living very luxuriously. The third advantage is that if the place is kept very, very simple, then none of the monks have to sacrifice their practice for the sake of all the other monks. So what I mean by that is that if the place is complex, at least one senior monk has to sacrifice his practice to be the manager of the place. And then many, many samaneras and junior monks have to sacrifice their practice in order to do all the chores. You know, to sweep all the paths, to mop all the floors, to fix all the light bulbs, to rewire the electricity, to fix all the water pipes, etc., etc. So I think in the original dispensation, nobody was sacrificed. The junior monks, the middle monks, and the senior monks were all able to live symbiotically for the sake of attaining Nibbana as soon as possible, and nobody was left behind. So that's what Anura Mahathir, myself, and the villagers of the nearby village, Ihala Kumburutaniwala, near Billihoya, we're all working together to make that happen, as well as dayakars from other places. Now, of course, as this project moves ahead, it's very natural for dayakars to become quite happy and excited and to want to contribute to the project in some way. So already, while I've been here recovering from the food poisoning at Anura Mahathir's house, we've had some food deliveries from Cargills, from Australian dayakars. I guess they made an internet order or something. And also dayakars from Colombo have been sending food and other things here as well. And that's, of course, something we're very, very grateful for. It's always beautiful to see people's faith and generosity. But we're putting out a different message through this Aranya. We're being very, very serious about how the Buddha taught that pratipada, practice as a form of dana, is superior to amsa as a form of dana. You see this decline of aranyas, that aranyas turn into pansalas eventually, and pansalas turn into businesses. This pattern that we see constantly inside the Buddha Sasana. It keeps happening because unwittingly, unknowingly, dayakars with much faith, they give too much to the monks, and the monks indulge in those offerings, and the true path is lost. And one of the ideas that keeps this pattern from happening, this pattern of corruption and downfall happening, is the idea that monks can't refuse the offerings of lay people. The idea that the Buddha always accepted offerings of people, made those offerings out of faith. But actually, when we look at the Sutta Pitaka, we can say definitively that that's not the case. There's quite a number of different cases where robes are offered to monks like Angulimala and even once to Ananda. And they politely refuse. They say, actually, great king. So King Pasenadi offered a set of robes to Angulimala after he worked out that he's not a killer anymore. And Angulimala was practicing very dushkara pratipadara at the time. And he just politely refused the king, saying, no, thank you very much, I'm content. And then there's also the case of the Buddha himself in the Nagata Suttas, in the Anguttara Nikaya, I think it's either chapter 5 or chapter 6, where a big group of Brahmins come to Aranya where the Buddha's meditating with a whole lot of dana and pirikara. And they make a whole lot of noise. And the Buddha says to the other monks, let me never accept this rubbish. Let me never accept these rubbish offerings. And then he gives a Dhamma talk about the dangers of amasa and how to develop proper practice instead. So what we want is just to correct our ideas, get a rebalance of ideas about how to support the Buddha Sasana properly. So of course, a bit of amsa puja is necessary, a bit, but only a bit. We don't want to go too far. We don't want to go to an extreme down that road. So this is why the Buddha taught that if you're giving to well-practicing monks who are serious about attaining nirvana, then the return is 1,000, 100,000, 100,000 fold. And if you can manage to find some Arya Sangha, then the return that you get from those offerings is immeasurable. It's appamana. So even if you give just a grain of rice to a monk who's a stream enterer, or anything above that, once returner, non-returner arhat, then even a grain of rice is going to count more than giving Mercedes-Benz to an ordinary consul. The only question is whether or not the Dahikas actually have faith in that teaching. Because you would have to have faith in that teaching, because the ordinary motivation for giving a Mercedes-Benz to a Pansala is to show off to everybody else in your community. So you don't need to have faith in that advantage, because you can see that advantage straight away. You can see how impressed the people around you are, and look on their faces when they see you turn up with a new Mercedes-Benz. But you do need to have faith in the idea that if I only give a grain of rice to a really good monk, then that's superior to a Mercedes-Benz, because you may not be able to see the returns on that until many, many years later, or maybe even after you die. So this is actually the reason why there's been so much decline inside the sasana. Not enough real faith. Because there's not enough real faith, people look for the sorts of returns you can see right here and now, which are always materialistic. Returns like your worldly status, returns like making business connections at the consul or at the Aranya, etc., etc. Returns like being able to be seen in the newspapers in a photo next to a well-known monk at a very big consul. So that's actually very good news for everybody now in the days of Corona, because there's so many lockdowns, you may not be able to get to the monks that you believe in to listen to Dhamma talks or to make offerings with your own hands. So what I mean by that is that everyone always asks, so how can we help? We want to be involved in some way, and the usual way that people think that they can do it is to send money or to buy something over the internet and get car girls to deliver it. But actually, now that everybody's got a lot more free time due to this corona lockdown worldwide, means people have got more time to take the Dhamma very, very seriously. They're starting with getting some right view, to properly study the Dhamma and to get a balanced view as to what the Buddha taught. So the normal view is that the Buddha taught something and then we don't need to learn it because it's too hard. And we can't attain Nibbana anymore because everything's changed and it's too hard. And all we can do is attain the heavens, go to the heavenly realms and wait in the heavens happily as a deva for thousands and thousands of years until Mekteya Buddha or Maitreya Buddha comes around. And then somebody will be able to teach us properly, and then we'll be able to attain Nibbana. And the way to get to the heavenly realms is to do pujas, to chant pirit, even if we don't understand them, and to give Mercedes-Benzes, even though we don't have any real faith. And that means that we get to go to the heavens even if we have bad sila, even if we don't practice the Buddha's teachings, even if we don't even believe in the Buddha's teachings, then all we need to do is do some pujas, and especially when we die, get monks to chant predict at our deathbed, so that in our last thought moment we have the Karaniya Metta Sutta running through our brain, and that will mean that we will get reborn in the heavens and everything will be fine. And we won't go to hell or the animal realm or the ghostly realm, even though we've been killing, stealing, committing sexual misconduct, lying, and drinking drugs for our whole life. So that's not what the Buddha taught. People want to believe that that's what the Buddha taught, because being a real Buddhist is really difficult. I mean, the Buddha taught that the start of the path is pansil. Of course, the start is to at least take T sadhana, right? But anyone can chant the words Buddham Saranam Gacchami. That's not too hard. A baby can do it. You know, it gets hard when you actually need to do something to change your life. Starting with pansil. So most people today think that at the very least, it's not possible to get through life without lying. And that white lies are perfectly acceptable. So it's very common for people to take pansil and to chant Musawada Virami Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami, and then to go home, and 5 minutes after they close the front door, they're telling their husband or wife a white lie about whether or not they did this or that chore in the home. Yeah. So it's understandable for people to basically cut corners on quality when they don't have enough time and they don't have enough resources and they don't have enough energy. It's sort of like a dodgy builder in Sydney. Maybe like a dodgy Vietnamese builder from Cabramatta who, you know, tells you that he can build you an enormous mansion for $100,000. And you think, oh, wow, it's a great deal. But the only reason that he can do it for $100,000 is because he cuts corners. He doesn't do anything properly. None of the doors are at right angles. And by the time the job is finished, the roof is falling off. So in Australia, and increasingly here in Sri Lanka, everybody's getting so busy making money to pay off their home loan and to pay off their car loan that they don't even have the time to discipline themselves to even keep pansil properly. And if you're surrounded by other people who are doing exactly the same thing, it's very easy for you to tell each other, It's all okay. It doesn't matter, everybody's doing it. A little bit like the Australian cricket captain I heard maybe a few years ago. He got caught for sandpapering the ball. And then there was this international furor, and then he said, but everybody does it. Yeah? So he's meant to be the leader of a nation. And then he just says, when he's caught doing something wrong, oh, no, it's not wrong, because everybody else does it. This is precisely what is wrong with this world. This is precisely the way that many people are going to end up going to hell. Enjoying all the armasa that the international economy offers these days. Well, not anymore now the coronavirus has locked everything down. But the idea is that you get to enjoy all the armasa and then not even keep your pump but it's all okay. Because if you do pujas, and you get some credit running through your brain before you die, you still get to go to heaven. But that's just not what the Buddha taught. You're in incredible danger. So we are starting this aranya, or this wanawasa, so that we can have at least a handful of monks inside the world who just aren't afraid of telling you the truth, who just aren't afraid of telling you things that may make you unhappy. Although, of course, this message makes a lot of people happy, but sometimes it makes people unhappy. Sometimes, you know, to be rejected, to have an offering rejected, makes some people unhappy. And we want to create a place where we have some fearless monks who don't mind losing a little bit of support, who don't mind getting a little bit of a bad reputation with foolish people, particularly foolish but rich and powerful people. So that all the serious people who want to hear the true Dhamma don't get misled and don't end up going to hell after they die. I mean, this is a really, really, really big issue. People keep forgetting about it, particularly in the modern world where there's so many distractions. Everybody is going to die. And everybody has to be really, really careful what they do with their life, because hell is real. And the animal realm is real, and the ghost realm is real, or being reborn as a really sick and poor human being is real. In a bad family where you don't learn any Dhamma, all these things are very, very real. This is like the majority of beings in the universe. This is the conditions that they live under. And it's absolute madness that people born in the oldest continuously Buddhist country in the world should get the wrong message and end up in those woeful states, thinking that they're going to go to heaven. So now that everybody's got more spare time, now that you can't go to work anymore, it's time to get really serious about this. Yeah? People are dying around you. You probably had family members who have died from the coronavirus by now. Death is real. It's going to happen to you. I had this little episode here where it was possible that I had the coronavirus with unusual symptoms. And so I spoke very, very carefully to Anura Mahathir about what to do if I look like I'm about to die. In other words, I plan for the future. I plan for the long term. I'm a grown-up man, which means I think about long-term issues. And the main long-term issue everybody has to think about when they're a real adult, a Satpurusha, is what's going to happen to them when they die. And what's going to happen to their loved ones when they die. There's no point spending your life developing investment strategies on the stock market, because none of that will go with you when you die. Or at least there's no point spending too much time doing those things. The majority of your time should be spent upon practicing the Dhamma. because you may be alive for another 50 years here on this earth, but if you end up going to hell, you may be there for another 10,000 years. But if you do things well and you go to heaven, you may be there for anywhere between 10,000 and a billion years. And if you attain Nibbana, then that's it, you know, true happiness and the end of suffering forever. So, you know, a wise person always measures cost and benefit. So, of course, you have to make some sacrifices here on this earth in order to attain good rebirth, in a good family as a human being or in the heavens, or to attain Nibbana. But those sacrifices are nothing compared to the returns that you get. And, of course, you can have some fun by practicing adhamma, by breaking pansil, and by having no faith. But whatever happiness you get on this earth is nothing compared to the suffering that you're going to have as an animal, or as a ghost, or as a being in hell. It really is as simple as that. Nobody needs any PhDs to understand this really simple message the Buddha was constantly putting out. But somehow we managed to confuse ourselves. We managed to find loopholes in the system. The loophole that is most prevalent in Sri Lanka is pujas and offering pitikota. So because I have much compassion for all of you, that's not what I'm interested in. I'm not interested in receiving pitikota from anyone, really. I mean, it's so easy to get pitikota in this world that, you know, we're just overloaded. You can get enough pitikota to last you 3 years in a single katina. Well, you can get enough pitikota to last 10 years in a single katina. And that's just from the villagers, let alone from the Daigas from Colombo. Now, this world is so packed full of amsa, it's not like the Buddha's time. Right? So we have to be much, much more careful these days about amsa and pitikota than the monks were in the Buddha's time. But even in the Buddha's time, when there was less amsa and less pitikota, even then the monks were refusing the pitikota. So how much more should monks today be careful and quite often be refusing pitikota that they don't need? What we want instead is for you to make good karma the real way. That is, by changing your life. We're getting serious about pansil at the very least. And getting serious about getting to know the Buddha's teachings. The original teachings, not the stuff that is taught by people today, but the stuff that was taught by the Buddha and his monks 2,500 years ago. You need to know there's a difference between those two things. And unfortunately, in traditional Buddhist cultures, it's not made clear that there is that difference. So the first step is to use this time that you have now to really clean up your act in terms of pansil, to get to the end of your day, every single day, with the purest sila that you can, and before you go to sleep every single night, to review your day and ask yourself, how did I go in terms of pansil? So just like many of you go to work, you go to the office, and then at the end of the week, you get a review from your supervisor, right, about your performance. What you need to do is get to the end of your day and ask yourself, how was my performance today in terms of pansil, in terms of the Buddha Sasana? And also, you should make the effort to go into Attasil on Poya days, and ideally on Uposatha days. So Poya being once a month, the public holiday in Sri Lanka, but the Uposatha days is actually once every 2 weeks. So it's the dark moon as well as the full moon. Just like the Christians in Australia 50 years ago, every Sunday they went to church, and every Sunday all the shops were closed because that was meant to be a day for everybody to practice their religion really, really seriously. So in the Buddha's day, people were doing that every week, every half moon, every dark moon, every full moon. And the monks were getting together every dark moon and every full moon as well, to do teaching. Now, also, now that you've got more time to take the Dhamma more seriously, if you haven't read the book In the Buddha's Words, it's an anthology of the Pali Canon, edited and translated by Bhikkhu Bodhi. It's a book about this big. It's got a blue cover with a yellow elephant on the front, by Wisdom Publications. If you have not read it yet, then you must. So I'm getting really serious about all this stuff now because, well, you might be dead by the next time we see each other. So you need to know what you need to do. So you need to work out the difference between what you think the Buddha's teaching is, all the things you've heard from Buddhist culture, and what the Buddha actually taught. And the most reliable guide to that is the Sutta Pitaka and certain parts of the Vinaya Pitaka. And the best introduction that English-speaking people and English-reading people can get to that is this book by Bhikkhu Bodhi. And after you finish that book, you should read another book also by Bhikkhu Bodhi, which is another anthology of the Pali Canon. It's called The Buddha's Teachings on, I think, social harmony, something like that. I'm sure you'll be able to work it out from Google. The Buddha's teaching on social harmony and community, something like that. It's a pink book. And Bhikkhu Bodhi's taken out from the suttas, mainly, many of the Buddha's teachings about how to get along with other people. So you need both of these things because even if you've understood the Buddha's teachings, what you're going to discover is that it's very, very different to what everybody else believes is the Buddha's teachings. And you can be sure that as a normal human being, that if it's a choice between being right and going alone in the path of righteousness and going together with everybody else on the path of unrighteousness, you would choose the second option. That's just the way we are. We're social animals. We find it very, very difficult to be different to other people. So unless a whole group of you together gets the right idea about what the Buddha taught, and then also works out from the Buddha's advice how to get along with each other really, really well without all of the, the crutches of modern technology and modern comfort, then as this world starts to become very, very different due to Corona and many other problems that the world faces, you'll find it almost impossible to practice the real teaching. It'll be a very frustrating situation for you that you know the true teaching, but you don't have the conditions to actually practice it properly. There's time to get moving with that work now. That's why Anura Mahathir and other people and I are working on this one Awasa. Now, unfortunately, we don't know how long before international travel normalizes again, if ever. We don't know if you can come to the One Awasa, and I'm still very committed to not using technology. This is just a very special thing. That there was this Corona scare, and I just want to assure all of you can see I'm perfectly well. And that things are going well for us here. But actually, after this meeting, we won't be meeting again until perhaps sometime in the future. I'll come to Australia for one visit to clean up a few things. But after that, I'm going to be back in Sri Lanka, more or less permanently. That's more or less my commitment to really do things the way the Buddha did things. So to not even catch planes unless absolutely necessary. So if you want to be able to get real teachings, then you'll need to find them from good monks in Australia. And there are good monks, but you need to make that effort. You need to, again, get really, really serious about the Dhamma and make that effort to find good teachings. And it's not enough just to do it over the internet like this, because the Dhamma is a human technology, and human technologies require human presence. And some of you should also contemplate returning to Sri Lanka, seriously, because it's a good country, actually. It's a beautiful country. It's actually got the greatest wealth in the entire world. It's got the Dhamma, the oldest continuously Buddhist country in the universe. You really should contemplate that and consider coming back to Sri Lanka. Also, cost of living is still affordable here. Land is still cheap. Food is still affordable. And there's plenty of sunlight and rain. Whereas in Australia, land is ridiculously expensive. You need to work like a slave to pay off your house. Food, no, it's not too bad. But in Sri Lanka, you know, even if everything breaks down, it's very easy to grow your own food in the backyard, and very easy if you're living with your family and your extended family, with your clan, and that's like a big Sri Lankan thing, whereas almost impossible to do that in Australia, even for Australians. So Sri Lankans still know how to get along, at least with their family, relatively well. Whereas Australians, it's more or less over. The whole concept of family has been broken for the last 50 years. And that danger is something that you can easily slide into in Australia. That people who are 10 years older than me have a good grounding in Sri Lankan culture. But people from my age and younger who were born in Australia, they don't, and they're very quickly going to lose their family values and their Buddhist values and be very rich but unhappy. But then, of course, with all the uncertainty around Corona and other things, probably not even very rich, just poor and very unhappy. Whereas in Sri Lanka, yeah, you may be poor, but you're much more likely to be happy. That's been my consistent experience in my travels here in Sri Lanka. I meet lots of villagers, and I do my best to talk to them in Sinhalese. But what I can see from all the interactions is, generally speaking, Sri Lankans are much happier than Australians, and actually much healthier than Australians as well. At least in the villages. The Colombo people are a different set, but the villages are pretty healthy, actually. So please think about coming back to Sri Lanka. You know, it's a good country. And it's always had a lot of potential, but it's never been capitalized. And unfortunately, you know, good Sri Lankans keep leaving Sri Lanka out of frustration. But things are changing and the war is over. And you should think about coming back to rebuild your homeland. Now, currently, Sri Lanka loses about 70,000 professionals every year. But that's a big brain drain on a small country. It'd be nice for those really smart people, at least the faithful smart people, to come back to rebuild this place. But of course, we know what is building Sri Lanka. Ever since Mahinda came to Sri Lanka 2,000 years ago. Now, Sri Lanka is not just a country. Sri Lanka is Buddhism. Yeah. Now, there is no country with no religion. So Australia used to be a country for the sake of the Queen, and the Queen was the sake of Christianity. Now, a country is not just a set of economic arrangements. And that's what countries are today, but you know, that's very short-lived. Once people just live for economic arrangements, they get so greedy, they end up fighting with each other and everything falls apart. People need religion, so that they have something good to live for. When they have something good to live for, They don't get greedy. They don't get angry. They can live with each other happily. That's the dream of Sri Lanka. That's the dream of Buddhism. To live happily with each other, peacefully with each other, through our lives here on this earth, and then to help each other in the heavens, and then to do that so well that we attain Nibbana as well. Yeah? That's a real vision for a country. That's a real vision for a people. And, one of the reasons why good people keep leaving Sri Lanka is because the leaders of Sri Lanka are very, very corrupt. The upper class in Sri Lanka is very corrupt. But if all the good people keep leaving, all the good and smart people keep leaving, then how are they ever going to be replaced? So you should know, at the very least, this monk is committed to staying here. This is home now for me. So I'm a homeless one, and I'm not particularly attached to any place, but I see the maximum potential for Dhamma here. And I'm very, very comfortable here in this culture. I've worked out how to balance out practice to make the ascetic life sustainable in the long term. So I'm just, extraordinarily healthy now. Whereas before I was very determined, but quite unhealthy. And now I'm very, very healthy and also still very, very determined. And there's great potential here. Don't believe the people who get all negative about how the Dhamma is these days. So sure, there's plenty of ordinary monks, but there's plenty of ordinary people. There's plenty of doctors, and a lot of them are ordinary. It doesn't mean that we should give up on the idea of medicine. So we don't need to believe that we're fated to decline. Please remember, the idea of fate is the opposite of what the Buddha taught. What the Buddha taught is fate is what we make. And what we do now determines our future, in combination with what we've done in the past. But if we learn the true Dhamma right here and now, and act in accordance with the true Dhamma, that Dhamma is so powerful, it's able to dilute to a very high degree the bad things that we've done in the past. So please know that you're very, very close. You have the Dhamma very, very close. You've got the most powerful tool for the attaining of what you truly want. That is the alleviation and the ending of suffering. That is the creation of true happiness in the long term. If you've got these tools really, really, really close, so it's time to get serious. You could be dead by tomorrow. I recently told Anura that if I suddenly get ill from a mutation of the coronavirus and it looks like I'm going to die very, very quickly, then I want him to secretly just carry me up to the Wanawasa and to let me just die in the kuti, in the forest, because I don't want my daikas to take me by helicopter to Colombo and trap me in a private hospital and hook me up to a machine as I die. It's not a normal thing for most people to do, to think so directly about death like this, but please do so. Please do so with the faith that you have nothing to fear from death if you practice the Buddha's teachings. If you practice the Buddha's teaching, death is completely a non-issue. It's just a continuation of the process that you've been going through for a very, very long time. We've all been reborn so many times. They're just pigs to the slaughter, cows to the slaughter, chickens to the slaughter. They've lost more blood personally for being killed in those slaughterhouses than there is water in the ocean. That's a simile that the Buddha gave about how many times you've been reborn, to really whack us over the head, to wake us up. So death is not the issue. Death is not the thing that you need to be afraid of and avoid thinking about. Living a bad life is the issue. Living without sila, at the very least, is the real issue. But if you've got good sila, you've got samadhi, you've got panya, death is no problem. you die and you go to heaven, or you get reborn as a happy, healthy, prosperous human being in a great family, or you retain nirvana. None of these things are issues. So please, in terms of the Wanawasa, if you can make it to Australia, you're very welcome to come along and give Anura Mahathir a call and come along to the Wanawasa. But don't be surprised if when you bring Pirikara, we don't take everything that you offer. And also, if you're thinking about sending things by mail to the Wanawasa, then please at least give Anura Mahathir a call to see whether or not we need the things that you want to offer. And if we do, then we can receive it. But if we don't, then please have a bit of restraint. And know that just by having that faith and wanting to make offerings, that makes immeasurable pin as well. Okay, so that's all that I can think of. Are there any questions?
Tarun sir ne Bhante. Prasanna here. I just need to find it out. So what are the things you plan to do at the RN? What sort of help you needed from Dayakas?
Not much, because not only do we use no electricity, but we keep building to a minimum. So we're just building mud huts. So they're very easy to build in Sri Lanka. There's so much mud in Sri Lanka. So yeah, we're just using wood from the forest mainly, and building walls out of mud, and then putting these asbestos concrete sheets over the top. So what we like is for people to come to do Shramadana. We don't need money, and that's just one of the principles behind the way that we're doing things, to do things so that both the poor and the rich can get involved. Yeah, to be honest, at the Wanawasa, we're quite content. I can't really think of anything that we need. What we're looking for is for people to make the effort to come and be inspired by what we're doing and see the possibilities. That the usual idea that facilities are the most important thing is untrue. That facilities come first and Dhamma comes second is untrue. Actually, Dhamma comes first and facilities come second. And when you've got the true Dhamma, then you don't need hardly any facilities. Oh, so what we're mostly interested in is teaching people a new culture of restraint in terms of Pirikara. So if you want to send things from Australia here, then we'd actually prefer you to not send it by Cargills or by courier as well. What you should do is the old-fashioned thing is call a relative or a friend that you have in Sri Lanka, and a relative or a friend that has some faith, and get them to come here when they have the time so that they can make the offering with their own hands and then receive some teaching when they make the offering. So that's something that you can do. You can just inform your friends and family in Sri Lanka that we do exist, and that when the lockdown periods stop again, then we are open to people coming to help maintain the place and build simple facilities through Shramadana, through volunteer work. And also, please tell any young men that you know in Australia who are looking to become monks in Sri Lanka that if they're really serious, if they pass all the tests that I'll put them through to check whether or not they're really serious, then I can help them. I can create ordination avenues for them. Or I can help create ordination avenues for them, in which they won't have to go through so much rubbish. They won't have to go through too much untrue Dhamma in order to get ordained.
So, Bhante, if we want to send any food or medicine, can we do it through Indica, or maybe she can contact Andhra Mahatma in Sri Lanka and then get an idea what you really need? Is that okay? Or?
Yeah, so what you need to do is first call Anura to find out what we actually need.
Yeah.
And then practice some restraint so that you only acquire what we actually need. And then in terms of delivery, the ideal is that you find a friend or a relative that you have in Sri Lanka, and you get them to deliver the pirikara.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we are quite extremely happy to see you doing really well, and then you haven't changed a single bit since we saw you last time in Australia, so we are quite happy. And the sermon was very timely, and then it's very fruitful, and it kind of opened our eyes as well. So bohoma ping Bhante, sadhu sadhu sadhu.
Very good. Okay, so after this meeting, this is it really. So we go back
Bhante,
to the... Yes.
Bhante, one question, if you have a little bit of time. How is this going in Sri Lanka?
Sorry?
Because how is your practice going in Sri Lanka? One of the reasons why you went is to achieve, your meditational goals and achievement of gathering Dhamma. So,
Yes.
is that going?
Yes, no, my practice is going really, really well. Better than ever, actually. So one of the reasons why I left Australia was I felt that I needed a change of conditions, and I needed to readjust my practice. I need to rebalance my practice somewhat. And so I went through a review period in the first 1 year in Sri Lanka, and readjusted many factors inside my practice. And what I found is essentially what I was doing was correct. And my ideas about how to practice correctly were indeed correct. Just that in terms of execution, I got the balance a little bit wrong, and basically was not resting enough and working too hard, and not getting enough proper food, and not getting medicine. And here in Sri Lanka, I get really good food, I get really good medicine, I get lots of support, so I don't have to work, basically. I don't, you know, things, there are so many faithful people in Sri Lanka. A monk doesn't even need to sweep his own path around his kuti. So that's really great. You know, people actually value a monk who can meditate. In Australia, if you're a meditation monk, people think you're a bludgeon. But in Sri Lanka, people actually see you as a treasure. That's really quite extraordinary, actually, if you think about the world and the universe, how many places that would actually occur. So because of all of these things, I've been able to readjust the factors of my practice, and my meditation is going superbly. And in fact, I've just been giving a few meditation tips to Anura Mahathir, who's been a very serious practitioner for years. And the things that I've been telling him are a bit new to him. But his reports are that the advice that I've been giving have been very, very effective. Okay, so if you want to contact me in the future, then again, you have to write a letter. You have to do the old-fashioned thing and sit down, calm down a bit, pull out a piece of paper, pick up a pen, and write a few sentences that you've actually thought about. And check your spelling and your grammar. Please don't write to me like it's a telephone message. So the coronavirus can be seen as a blessing. It's time to return to slower and traditional ways. Yeah. It's only through slow and traditional ways that we can reclaim our humanity. That's why I'm very, very strict about this technology thing. There's people turning into animals who know how to use mobile phones. They don't even know how to talk to each other properly. Yep. So if you want to contact me, except for this very narrow stream of being able to talk to Anura Mahathir through Indica, you can't really get through to me unless you actually come, or if you write a real letter on a piece of paper and you send it. But send it by registered mail, because Sri Lankan ordinary mail is highly unreliable. Okay. Any more questions? Last chance. The bar is about to close. Okay. Sambhapapasya akaranam kuswa supasamvada sachitta pariyodapanam etam bunham stasanam. Very good. Terawan Sarana.
Terawan Sarana, Bhante.